Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online recorded live on Twitch, Saturdays, 1500 Universal Time. I'm Matt Earl from Imperium News. Over the years, the Council of Stellar Management Candidates had relied on reputation, popularity, and constituencies to put them into office. During the early days of the CSM elections, the campaigns were waged with homemade videos and forum posts. That evolved into appearances on fan sites and media sites like EVE Radio. Blogs and podcasts were also favorites for campaign stops. Jade Cougar's Lost in Eve or Alexei's Declarations of War held debates or roundtables that gave candidates a place to show what they knew. By 2013, Xander Fina's Crossing Zebras podcast set out to interview all candidates, 31 at the time, as something of a publicity stunt. The interviews created hours of listening joy for gym workouts and driving commutes. The following year, Cap Stable set out to do the same, but by 2015, the candidates list reached 75. The team interviewers covered as many as they could. That led to funny moments like one where the interviewer was secretly broadcasting from his closet to avoid angering his wife. This year, I was invited to help Cap Stable conduct their third year of interviews, but most of the members had moved on or were too busy. The CSM incumbents announced that they would not take interviews with Cap Stable, having been dissatisfied with last year's interviews. Either way, it was clear the interviews were not going to happen. Noisy Gamer, a member of the team, had clearly done a lot of prep work, so I asked TIS fans over Twitter if they were interested in hearing interviews. 80% of poll responders said yes. I set up office hours twice a day for 7 days on Talking in Stations Discord. That captured 25 videos and a couple of roundtables. You can find all this on the podcast feed and Talking in Stations YouTube channel. The original idea was to entertain listeners by conducting hostile interviews that were funny or sometimes rude, but it was not a natural role. Making making light of a candidate's important moment seemed a little bit artificial and cruel. The interviews became respectful discussions instead. The focus was to reveal the player as a person and an EVE enthusiast. Although I consider the effort a successful endeavor, it could have been done under Cap Stable's banner instead of doing it for this show. It never occurred to me because it happened so fast. In fact, this whole CSM election should have been a unified group effort by EVE media outlets. All the candidates would have been able to have wouldn't been able to reach the broadest possible audience if that were the case. So that's my one regret. But the EVE media, with all its brands and flavors, is a common effort done by a group of enthusiasts. So to learn more about CSM Institution, listen to our previous podcast on the topic. That's on this podcast that was taken 2 weeks ago. And stay tuned as we cover CSM 12's election cycle today on Talking in Stations. Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the CSM, but first let me introduce my new favorite EVE player. I met him during the CSM interviews, and his name is Victor. How are you, Victor?
I'm very good, thank you. I don't know why you think I'm your favorite, but thanks very much.
It happens. I have like things like catch my eye in this game, and all of a sudden I can't stop from saying this is my new favorite thing. And
basically means you're doomed.
Yeah, it's like it's the end of your career.
Like the rest of us, you're going to be cast aside at some point.
Oh, my new favorite. Yeah, who's
Right.
Victor? Whatever.
All right. So what I wanted to talk about with you, Victor, was what happened early on for the audience, so they can kind of understand what the process was. We opened up these office hours and people showed up and said, "Yeah, I'll be there." And I wrote emails to everybody in the game so that everybody had a fair chance to kind of know that this was happening, incumbent or not. And one of the guys that responded was this Russian guy, and he was, I heard some mechanical thing happening as if he was loading ammunition into a gun. So I asked him, "Are you loading a gun?" And he said, "No, that's my mom. She's sewing." So I felt so bad about that. because here I'm imagining this guy's trying to get on the CSM, and his mom is like sewing his clothes. And I thought, oh, I don't think I can do these hostile interviews. And then I think the very next one was you, and I was like, I like this guy too much to try to derail him or to make him look bad or anything like that. So thanks to you, Victor, my whole interview style kind of changed and became more about how cool are you, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's all right. All you have to do is look at my keyboard, and I kind of like put myself down anyway. So
Your keyboard does all the talking.
yeah, it does.
And that was pretty funny because that was what was genuine, was that you're like, yeah, I lost a freighter by jumping it into head GP. I couldn't stop laughing at that. And they're like, but I learned my lesson. And then later in the conversation, you say, oh, I lost a freighter going through Rancer. But I learned my lesson there too.
Yeah, exactly. You just live and learn.
Yeah. So you have one null sec lesson and you have one low sec lesson. It's pretty funny. So yeah, I wanted to ask you again, like you're no longer on the CSM ballots and stuff, but when you decided that you were going to run, what made you decide to do it?
Yeah, basically, I just followed the previous CSM and the previous summit. I only came into it fairly new. Like told you before during the podcast that I kind of just caught up with it last year when I met people who were playing Eve, and just I guess playing the game with other people just makes you see a whole new aspect of Eve.
Yeah.
It really gets you out of this bubble. Like after playing by myself, for 4 years, you kind of like it. You don't care. Like it's a funny thing. You don't care about the game in a social sense. You just kind of play. It's like playing a first-person shooter or something. You just play it for yourself, and there's nothing in it. But once I met a group of guys and we all started working together, you start to see things that actually affect, like how the game works as a social unit and as a community.
Yeah.
And that's what just made me think, oh, yeah, well, what can we do to make things change, or what can we, how can we get things to start moving, to better the community and just, better the gameplay. One
Yeah.
thing that's always bugged me though was player missions, and I kind of just,
Said
got
I'm going
away
to
with
fix
it and
these.
just well, yeah, well, when I was playing by myself, I just kind of got over it and stopped doing it and just got into marketing and industry, and that was just to make ISK so I could keep playing the game, sort of thing. But yeah, when I started playing with other people, yeah, I was going into nullsec and doing other things and learning about other things.
Yeah. So the idea is you want to help the game. So what you're watching here is this is you escaping a freighter gank. It looks like.
Yes, there's a video on YouTube that I kindly borrowed from Marky Dragon while he was live streaming. I should mention that because that is his footage that I've borrowed. But basically, he was live streaming Burn Jeter, and I was watching him live stream Burn Jeter, and I saw that there was a Fenrir tackled on the perimeter gate. So I thought, oh, well, I need to get out because I've got courier orders to do. So I thought, well, let's just take my Raya out that way, and I should be able to slip past because they're busy with the Fenrir. Unfortunately, when I landed through the gate, a Macarial kept bumping me, and I was being bumped for a good 25 minutes, and I couldn't warp. So I think that's a bug as well, because people were telling me I should have been able to warp. I'm not sure the official sort of, whether you are supposed to warp or not. But yeah, apparently I didn't warp. And yeah, the next minute these guys came in. Once the Fenrir got away, I don't know if he logged out or not, but he got away. And then basically you're seeing there is the 100 plus Corsair, I think you had to say it, Gank fleet come in. And there was also smart bombs and things going off as well. I actually got down to half hull. And
Oh.
thankfully, I had some friendly firefighters, as they call themselves, repping me. Just random people, just on the gate, repping friendly freighters, providing a friendly, safe service.
Trying to troll the
Um,
trolls.
yeah, yeah. So it was very lucky. But yeah, I got to half hull by the time Concord showed up. And then obviously you can see there's a lot of lag and things going on when Concord comes in, which is always fun.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. We let that play out a little bit. We're actually going to now move into CSM candidates because we've got a condensed show with a lot to talk about. But stick around and be a part of the fun.
Yeah, no worries, man.
It's great to have you here. And so the next thing we're going to see is the how to vote video by CCP Logibro. Okay, do we have that queued or do? All right. And at this point, anybody, it's a free for all, so you guys can all talk about this stuff. But rolling
How to
videos.
vote.
How to
I don't
vote.
think you talk about how to vote.
Just make sure you go do it.
Because it's complicated, right? All right.
Yeah,
here's-
it is a little bit more complicated than first past the post.
All right. We're rolling video. Yep.
Saying not getting audio from the video.
So somebody ad lib the instructions.
Oh, since Logibro's Australian, I can try and throw that down. The voting system's it's pretty much the same as the Australian voting system, actually.
Except it's not a crime to not vote here.
Well, true. Although I did get away for many years without, even when I joined the army, I didn't even get fined for not registering.
And we actually
is
talked
quite
about that
ironic.
last night, right? We should go to the Australian system. Was that you that brought that up, Matterall, or was that like Neville or
Oh, that might have been Neville.
Neville? Yeah, that we should go to that game where it requires you. If you want to play Eve, you're gonna have to vote. I'm like, oh, the Australian system.
Okay. If we're not getting sound on the videos, we could just leave it running while we talk, right?
Well, yeah. Well, look, you go in there. There's a big giant mismatch of people that are there, right? And you select the ones you want to, and you put them in the order. It's 10, right? There's 10 that go on the ballot this year.
Yep, there's 10 on the ballot this year.
Hold on. You know, one thing we didn't do because we're switching the show around. We're in transition. So there's a little bit of hiccups. I didn't introduce you guys.
No,
They
you
know
didn't.
who we are.
I don't think you
They
were
really
so
do,
enamored
right?
by your favorite new person. You completely forgot the rest of us. Like, how could you?
He's been downgraded.
Forgot my old.
Yeah,
forgot my
you
old
know.
friends.
Screw
All
us,
right,
we
well,
ain't the favorites no more.
I'll introduce you to make it quick. But Tiberius Stargazer, Dirk McGurk, these are well-known figures. We're going to have a Pothney here a little bit later. He's going to come in for the news segment. And we
Salvin
have-
Hardin. Do you know who I am?
Noisy,
Do you know that I've lived in Nullsec?
Noisy Gamer, who's with us today as well. Why don't you explain that inside joke, Dirk McGurk?
Oh well, there was a thing yesterday on Crossing Zebras Discord, and there was just one of those moments where somebody's like, they're having a discussion about what was it? They were having a discussion about sovereignty mechanics or whatever, and like it was a little back and forth. And somebody's like, have you ever lived in Null? And there was this moment where it then went to complete shit, where basically Sullivan was like, "Do you even know who I am?" and then it completely degraded from there. But whatever. Yeah.
The funny, the
Inside
funny
joke for those who read it.
The funny part about that is he was arguing with a very, very, very sharp and smart spy master. So of course she knows who everybody is. So it was kind of a ridiculous thing because the next few questions were like, well, what campaigns have you been in?
How dare you? How dare you microaggress me by not knowing who I am?
All right, enough of that. That's some inside the Beltway gossip, let's call it.
A lot of the news site Discords actually are open to the public, so you can actually just join these if you have Discord. So the Crossing Zebras one, Talking Stations one, the EN24 one, like they're all public, so you can go on, you can find them, and you can join them.
Yeah, I think ours is listed over here, right? There you go. Okay. Oh, that looked like trigger pulling. I better not do that. So enough of that trigger pulling. So let's get started. We're talking about CSM candidates. We did this thing where we had interviews with people to give them a place to, get some exposure. And out of the 64 total candidates, we picked up 25, which is a good, 39, 40%, and gave them, the group of them was like 10,000 listens on the podcast, and that's all of them combined. And the YouTube stuff had about 500 more, if I'm not mistaken, or less than that actually. But they got some exposure out of it and stuff like that. So, how's that measure up to years before when this was done?
Well, like when Cap Stable was doing it, just as an example for last year. Last year they interviewed 36 candidates, of which 30 actually wound up on the ballot because Cap Stable would go ahead and would interview people before the ballot came out, and so they always would have interviews with people that weren't running. So they did 30 out of 53, so that was less than 60%. It seems that that's about the percentage. Anything that over 50% was good. So that's where it is in relation to history. It's
When when Xander did it, there were 31 candidates, and he got all of them, or most of them.
I want to say he got like 25.
It was pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, he also I think had interviews with candidates who didn't make it on the ballot. There was
He did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
he did a few.
Yeah, because there was one guy who, because of Xander, brought out his neo-Nazism. The guy didn't make the ballot. So that interview, at least that
Oh, I
was.
remember that.
Which is shocking because today he'd probably be a front runner
Yeah.
in this political
Wow.
climate.
But yeah, I remember that, and the craziness that happened on the forums after that as well. That was
Yeah.
crazy business.
And that
Yeah.
was
Yeah, so Xander made some news that way, and it was like really, really good. He got a high percentage, but some of them, I think he interviewed James 315. I'm not sure.
it looked like there was some discussion about it. So I don't know if you did or didn't, but
Maybe we're getting more candidates now because we're actually giving them airtime.
right.
Because that
Yeah.
election there, that was really the first time anybody had done kind of a major push to interview people.
Before that, it was more roundtables and debates kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you beforehand, I think the only real thing that really gave the players a tool to find this information was when one of the media sites decided, hey, we're going to run a thing on it, which is really difficult to actually get anybody in a media circle to actually do a regular thing because it is so much work. And the vote match, that was really the only two places you could find any info. So if nobody ran anything on the media sites, the only place you could go was vote match and the forums, and that was it.
Yeah, that vote match, is that still around this year?
No.
Oh, that's too bad because that was kind of good.
First year it hasn't been run, which is a big shame because it was an extraordinarily useful tool. Because they sent out a set template to all the candidates, which the candidates then responded on. And based on those responses, people could then go and use a matrix where they put in their own responses, and then it would match them up with the candidates that best matched them. But I don't know why it wasn't run this year. I haven't heard any news or information, but it's a bit sad that it's not running.
All right,
It,
but
it would have been hard for Deidre to run that this year because he usually wouldn't run it until the ballot was announced. But the ballot was announced, 6 days before the election starts. So I don't know if he would have had time to run that even if he wanted to.
That's the thing. Is this unusual that it was only a 6-day between official candidates being announced and election day? Is
I
that
want to
more?
I want to say that it was at least 2 weeks in the past. But this year we got a really late start, and I don't know if that was because of the situation in CSM 10, or what. Because I mean, on January 15th, there were 9 people who had announced that they were running on the Evo forums, and usually in the past few years, that number was like 20 or 25.
Yeah. So
Mm.
there's very few candidates up front. And
Well,
probably that's
but
what encouraged a
part
lot
of
of
it
people to jump in.
part of it was a delay in part of it was a delay in CCP really coming out and saying anything too. I think we had about a week or 2 weeks earlier last year when they actually made mention of, hey, it's CSM election season. So you had some people that
Mm.
were kind of jumping in early, but not that many because the whole thing seems like it was delayed.
That's true. People were even asking, like, is anything going on with that? Like,
Yeah.
it started to get noticeable. But the point that I wanted to get to was, how does this year compare with previous years as far as exposure? Not just talking in stations interviews, but Ashtarothi had some. Excuse me. Ashtarothi had some, and then there was some debates on statecraft that are continuing this weekend. So overall, it's about the same amount of coverage, even though it's a condensed period of time.
Yeah, like I
Mm.
think Cap Stable with the podcasts, dominated last year. But you have places like Event who have their written questionnaire that gets filled out, and I think like almost 20. Is it gonna be? Are they gonna hit
Uh,
20?
we've gone past 20. Actually, hang on, I'll tell you. I want to say it's about 25 have responded so far.
Yeah.
And they're getting published for a day at the moment.
Yeah, so that's like a really good place to go if people prefer reading instead of listening to podcasts. That's a really good place to go. So yeah, I think it's about even, if not maybe a little bit more this year.
There you go,
Plus-
22.
Yeah. Plus,
22.
there's, Noisy Gamer, you have a great sheet up that shows, how you can get information on these candidates. I think EM24 does with Tiberius's writing, and Reaver's doing something for Imperium News this weekend. So there's definitely a lot of information out there, but it is a lot of information in a short amount of time, which was one of the complaints that we were putting out multiple podcasts per day, and it was too much information, basically, for somebody who wanted to hear it all.
Yeah, because certainly the Cap Stable ones, they were published over the space of, I want to say, a couple of months off the top of my head. There was one or two coming out every day or every other day, something like that, and it was much more spaced out, it's much more spread out. But because they started preparing to do this, and then quite last minute went, no, we're not going to do it this year. It's meant that everybody else is suddenly going, oh my God, we haven't got this thing to do. So everybody's now scrambling to try and fill this void that they've left.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody out there had plans to be doing, interviews because they figured, hey, Cap Stable's going to take care of it. They do a fine job with it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and then when it was like they didn't come through, everybody's like, oh, well, we should do something. And it goes back again to kind of what we said for a long time, right? That I really do wish, because there's a lot of effort that goes into this. I mean, the hours that Matterall, the hours just in terms of amount of time that Matterall has put into this, and anybody else who's done any of the interviews, Ash did far fewer. Rick Javix did some. The work that Noisy Gamer puts into it for the stuff on his site, right? A lot of work. But then when you look at the hours that Matterall had, like open hours, like before he went to work in the morning, at night, it was just crazy. There needs to be something where people in the Eve media, if they want to do this public service, okay, for the Eve community out there, work together, people, work together. Yes. You know what? You may not like INN. You may not like Crossing Z. Guess what? You know what? You are not INN. You are not Crossing Zebras. Come together, find a place that you can do it at, and work together. Spread kind of the effort. leverage off of one another. Quit recreating the wheel. There doesn't need to be 4 different versions of an interview with a particular person out there. There just needs to be one quality one.
Hey, you're the one that actually brought it to my attention. It's like, why is everybody recreating the wheel? And I was like, I don't know. And I'm kind of embarrassed to be in this position of doing this all on my own. And I said, in my defense at the time, it's the only way I can rely on it being something that happens, because it's just me and it's just office hours. It's my own kind of contribution or sacrifice. And I don't have to depend on anybody that doesn't show up, that sort of thing. But
That right there is really the big hurdle. Okay, and it's the big hurdle with a lot of people in real life, right? If you want something done right, do it yourself. Kind of a mentality that I can't rely on other people to come through the way I would. So therefore, I'm going to put it all upon myself. And I don't know.
yeah, well, that's for the showing up on time stuff. But I did have a lot of help. Obviously, this was all based on Noisy Gamer's work. And second, I had Sunshine Harvester, who's also part of the Discord, who's from Australia, actually. Victor, there's a countryman,
Nice.
and he did a lot of the sound quality for the voices. So I would record, dump it into a folder. He would QC the sound and return it to me. Then I'd put it into the package and send it out. That's how it was a little more quality than just grabbing the audio and sticking it in there. So thanks to him for that. But I think the point is well taken that I didn't. I came into this totally backwards, but it would have been just as easy for me to hand all that stuff over to, CSM Watch or Cap Stable people. I could have done all this work and just handed it over to them, and it would have been like they did it pretty much. So I wish I'd thought of that before I'd started, because I think that's the way I probably would have done it.
Well, that kind of thing takes planning. I remember last year, Cap Stable had asked me to be a part of the thing that they were doing. And I think they asked me in like November. So I mean,
Yep,
you
yep.
really got to get the planning going early on these things, in order to not have to do 25 interviews over the course of I don't know, what is it, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever that you've been doing this.
Oh, 6 days.
So yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, like a really compressed. God, that's even worse. Over a really compressed period of time. You get it together. You figure out who are going to be the technicians in the background, who are going to be kind of the sources of information. Noisy's been great. Obviously at that part. Who are going to do interviews, when they're going to be available, and then you kind of like put the word out, to how you're going to do it, so that you can do it in a slightly more leisurely way than this compressed thing with only one person doing it.
Yeah, the other thing is that Cap Stable was willing to do interviews that they knew and they were willing to do the work and put like hours and hours of work into an interview and then have the candidate not run. They were just willing to go ahead and do that. And like last year, one out of 6 interviews, the person wound up not running. So that's how they were able to do it in such a long stretch.
It's really kind of awful, because I mean, maybe sometimes it's accidental. Like the leader of Test, Sapporo Jones, forgot to actually fill in the paperwork.
He didn't send off his passport and things to CC.
Yeah, it's just like, oops.
Which is brilliant. Well, whoops, I did all this campaigning, and I guess I'm not running no more. Sorry,
so
guys.
That's clearly an accident, but there's some people who never intend to actually run, but they just get the exposure and that sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, so all that to say, it was a lot of work. It could have been done a little bit more cohesively, but I think it was an overall success, especially because every interview seemed to be worthwhile. And there was some that they really surprised the heck out of me. So let's move on to the highlights of the season, the CSM season, not necessarily TIS interviews, but what are some highlights of this election cycle for you guys? And I can start if you guys can't think of anything.
Too many people.
Yeah, there is. Well, this is a thing that amazes me.
Well,
like 4 years ago, there was like we were having this discussion before the show. There was only like 30 odd people that would run for CSM, and all of a sudden, a massive explosion of candidates. And now we currently have 64, which is a lot. But so far, my highlight is Zanuria sending me a video saying, "Vote for me. I am an orb," and then him just doing a dance. which is just both bizarre and hilarious all at the same time. So,
But it's something you'll
Well.
always have. So there you go.
That's true.
yeah, I will still feel every time I look at the name, the reaction I get inside when I saw that video for the first time. I was like, what is going on in this world?
But I am a pumpkin. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're still coming in. I mean, some of my favorites so far have been people like Roden, who is campaigning so hard. He is on every single platform you can get, everywhere. And he seems to be very researching his subjects. But if that's one candidate you can't find any shortage of information on, that's him.
Victor, who are you going to throw your support to? Your whole constituency.
Yeah, because I'm not on there. I don't know. I liked was it Erica, her accessibility kind of ideas. That's
Mhm.
really
Yeah,
neat.
yep.
I think that's a really cool thing. But I mean, another thing that's interesting is I'm pretty sure all the previous CSMs are going up for re-election.
Not all.
If I'm not all, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think
No,
a lot of them are.
Apothene is
So
joining us
the-
finally. So I just want to say hi, Apothene.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Okay. So
This is your other favorite because you actually break the whole show to say hi to him. Yeah.
yeah. We'll fix
But,
this. We'll fix this.
Yeah, so there's 9 incumbents rerunning this year, and that's Steve Renukin, Zanuria the Judge, Jintan,
Oh.
Arith, Bobmon, Indominate, Noobman, and Sullen Decimus.
Cirque's getting triggered. I could see it in his eyes.
Why am I getting triggered?
Incumbencies.
No,
Term limits.
single year incumbencies are fine. Yeah, fine. You want to go for 2 terms? That's fine. I think that's absolutely great. I said, when you get out into the 3 and 4 realm, no, I think you need to cut yourself off. Go cold turkey for a couple seasons at least.
Well, for me, it was the interviews kind of started powering themselves because I got to meet interesting people from all over. And some of the ones that I thought like, okay, let's do this. You don't have a chance, but let's do this interview, blew me away. And I'm happy to have been blown away. But like Gecko from Pravi, who talks about player history, I was just fascinated with that. Same with Javen, was amazing from Eve Muni. His outlook and just how he's more. He reminded me of a Jedi librarian. That's what was going through my head after a while. It's like these guys, to me, that's pretty amazing. But we caught moments like I was doing Suetonia's interview and in pops Reload. And he's like, hey, how's it going? In the middle of the interview. I was like, leave it. And I was like, okay, you two, same room. Tell me about Mr. Hyde. What went wrong there? Because they're 2 out of the 3 players, or actually 2 out of 4. And they kind of explained it a little bit, which is interesting. And then Reload had his own interview, which is pretty interesting because he does a lot of videos and he's doing something really amazing. He's on Serenity server, going over there, and he's doing a little documentary on that, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, a little PvP tournament type thing.
Yeah.
They don't have an election, do they?
No,
there's
they
no Serenity based CSM, right? Or Politburo or whatever it is they might
there
have
isn't.
over there.
No,
I mean,
I
they
don't
have
think
their
so.
own version of the Pope. They have like a Space Pope version, but they don't have their own version of the CSM.
Like a
But I
space
guess they.
program?
Yeah.
Has the Space Pope in on the Serenity server been declared an enemy of the state, or
It's a schism, yeah.
Space Mao.
He's like
Space Mao. There
it's
you
like a
go.
French Pope. It doesn't count. Yeah. Well,
A way to offend our French viewers, Matterall.
yeah, both of them. Sorry, guys, I'm with you. I love French. Yeah, so
we can't even export democracy to
I don't love.
to the-
Matterall doesn't love
to the
specific French things.
Chinese.
He just loves French.
I just love French.
Vive la France. There
I
you
had
go.
a second word, but I was like, toast?
No, I'm going to take that shovel out of your hands now, so you stop
Yeah,
digging this hole any deeper. All right.
All right. Thank you. So those were some of my highlights. Were getting to know some of these guys that I would probably not cross paths with, and realizing, like Victor here, that I have so much in common with them, and that was a big deal for me. That was, my winning thing. But who do you think's going to win, you guys?
Um,
Eve's gonna win.
Oh, I forgot to say, I think
Dirk.
Yin Tan did a really good interview, and I think it's definitely worth a listen. And I kind of thought, I hope he's not on the fence, but if he's as like clear-minded and talkative and informative as he is here, then he's a shoo-in.
Yeah, I think
No,
I think the amount of
going to win.
exposure.
Cordelia says.
Yeah, well, it's true. Nullsec is going to win. That's probably something we want to talk about. Why so many Nullsec key
Nullsec.
candidates apply? But Jin Tan is definitely up high on my list. Just
did
mainly
enjoy
because
his
the amount of work
podcast.
he puts in. Yeah.
Well, well, let's say about Nullsec though, who's back? You have Sort Dragon, who's coming back after skipping a term. You have Vince Draken from NC, our boss, who is running, and you have Lady Scarlet campaigning to the vast number of renters that are out there.
They're going to their renter demographic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
This is where the Northern Coalition Party has to
Yeah,
has
coalesce.
to reach into.
So
Go
Noisy,
vote or we kick you out your space. There you go.
Noisy didn't
10% discount.
didn't renters in the past get a discount if they voted? Didn't that happen in the past?
Yeah, Xdeath with Shadow of Xdeath was offering discounts on the rentals if they voted for him, and he didn't win immediately. But he
So
wound
no
up
discounts.
but he did wind up on the on CSM on CSM 10 as a replacement, like the second or third replacement, and then I think he like made 4 posts to complain about stuff and left.
He made about 4 posts and left. But so that's kind of an interesting relationship between Vassars and I don't know, what's the opposite?
I
You
mean,
you English guys would know. I don't.
So, I mean, but as far as like alliances, the usual candidates are out again in force again. Like Goonswarm Federation has 5 candidates so far this year. 3 of them are incumbents. So they're putting in a good force. They're certainly the largest representative alliance. PL has 3, NC has 2. We got 2 from Circular 2. Who else have we got on this list? A couple from Darkness.
PL had like fucking 15 last year.
Oh my god.
Yeah, loads.
Yeah. Last year the winners were basically the Imperium, PL. If you include Newman as part of PL because he's got PL cap alts, and then Steve. That was basically who won last year.
Right. I mean, but you've got to look at. All right. So the way the Imperium does it is a little bit different, right? They are going with that. We are a political machine kind of thing in this. PL, on the other hand, like the people that were up there. Look, Bobmon was not up because he was some sort of PL thing, right? I mean, he was up because of his Eve News 24 connection and casino money, but Nash was not there as that, right? I mean, the other people, it's not really like they're putting people up, right? It just happens to be people from PL, and PL happens to have people that have some name recognition in that area.
I think that the PL and
for all sorts of different
Imperium are kind of like the complete opposite ends of the spectrum, where the Imperium are that very organized political bloc, and PL are a loose collection of people that happen to work together sometimes, occasionally, maybe. So like Hyde and Nash only just joined, and neither of them in their time in PL spent much time there. I was running, and I wasn't particularly using anything I'd done with PL for what I was running on. Like Bobmon, I have no idea what Bobmon is supposed to represent, but
I mean, are we going to consider Suetonia a Goonswarm candidate?
He really shouldn't. If you listen to his,
was he still in PL when he announced? I don't remember.
You really shouldn't, because if you listen to his interview, he very much says, I'm not in it for the culture. I'm in it for the exposure to younger players, newer players, and he's having a great time, but he's not endorsing them. They're not endorsing him that I know of. Maybe they are.
Yeah,
but like some corps and alliances in Eve are very, you're in this corp and alliance and that's who you are, and there's like a big deal of identity for the player. But some players, like, they are who they are and they are in this corp for this reason, and they will happily move the next day or wherever because of whatever reasons.
Yeah, well, part of the problem that like Suetonia is going to have is that there are 64 candidates, and so what people do is they have to have a quick way to winnow down who they're going to look at. And so one of the first things that you do is you look, oh, what alliance are they in? Oh, he's in Goon Swarm. Bop, drop him off.
I don't see Suetonia not getting on there.
He's got that
I
name recognition.
at
Mm,
this point, the only person that I'm willing to say is going to get on is Aerith.
You think it's all up in the air?
I think it's all up in the air, and it depends on turnout.
Noisy, I will bet you a billion-isk Suetonia gets on the CSM.
I don't. I might, like I said, I have no clue what's going to happen, so
He might get-
I'm not going to make any bets because
He might get banned.
yeah, the thing is, I don't know that Suetonia is going to get on, but I'm not going to say that he's not going to get on. I'm saying it depends totally on how many people come out to vote on who gets elected.
And how does
Clear.
that play out,
We
though?
can't
Hold
get
on a
back.
second, Epothany. Hold on. Tell me why that is the case. What's a higher turnout favor and what's a lower turnout hurt?
Okay, the higher turnout hurts the nullsec blocks because what happens is the quota in the single transferable vote goes up, and so you have to get more votes in order to get your candidate on. So let's say that you have 22,000 votes like we had last year, then that means that Aerith and Nominate get on easily, and then they can have enough to have whoever number 3 is have coattails. But if we have, I don't know, let's say that we go up to 35,000 votes, then that means to guarantee that both Aerith and Nominate get on, they're going to need 6,000 votes. And then there's going to be no coattails whatsoever.
And last year there was, by comparison, 22,347 or something votes.
Yeah. And
That's what I
then the
think.
other thing is that
How many was it? 22,000?
22,000. So it was a low turnout.
Or
yeah. And then you also have to remember that last year there were 14 candidates, and then this year there were 10 candidates, or 14 spots, and this year there's 10. So it's really bumping up the number that you need in order to guarantee that your guy's going to get on.
I mean, again, name recognition plays a really big role in all of this, right? So does organization. Vince Strachan has got some name recognition. He's got organization behind him, and I just don't know. I just don't know if it's enough.
Yeah, I mean, before I heard that Brothers of Tangra was basically being told to vote for Vince, I was almost I was almost willing to bet that Vince wouldn't get on. But now, I'm not sure.
I mean, as far as Suetonia goes, in the absence of, let's say, reload, I would say probably yes, but I think there will be some vote splitting there amongst the types that kind of like both and don't know who to go with first.
totally.
Who gets the troll vote? Since Zenuria
I think
is...
it's
sorry, go
not
ahead.
necessarily a strictly true statement that a higher voter turnout is worse for the null sec blocks, because
It's
it
got to
might
make it bad for everybody.
Well, it just means that you may have inspired a higher turnout in nullsec, which means the nullsec blocks are doing better.
Yeah, but that
like if you mean there's a higher turnout percentage-wise across the board split uniformly, then yes, that may be true. But I'd be very careful in how you word it.
well, let's say that goons turn out. So then goons will get theirs, but then they'll get theirs at the expense of the other nullsec entities.
Sure. Imperium's a lot smaller than what it was last year, which is a super interesting thing. Like, they've got far fewer people who will be following their ballot to a greater or lesser extent.
I don't know about that because they're more, I would say, condensed rather than smaller. Like there might have been a lot of SMA people that didn't really vote Imperium. They voted their own guy, Kyle Aparthos or
I
whatever.
mean, they've dropped. I mean, obviously, the largest, Condi's still there, but they've dropped, like, what was it, more than half of the alliances that were in the Imperium, which, they would have voted on the Imperium ballot to some extent.
Yeah, last year it looked like there were about 3,500 people that voted for either Aerith or Nominate first as their first choice. So yeah, so it's gonna be interesting. And also last year it looked like there was a concentrated effort to get at least one member from each of the Imperium alliances onto the board.
Do we know what they're doing this year? What the balloting looks like? Sorry, official ballots.
last night on Open Comms, the person putting together the slate, besides saying I was biased, was going ahead and saying that he was still trying to put it together.
Okay. I know that CVA has one that Yintan put together and has a couple of CVA guys on there as well. I know that Horde has their own ballot. Waffles has their own ballot. So people are looking to put their representative in. Sort obviously is going to have his guys have a ballot. Then there's this high sec ballot, right?
Yeah, and the
Sorry,
high
what
sec,
now?
High sec ballot. Yeah, okay. All right,
I was
I get
being
the joke.
facetious.
I get the joke.
yeah, and that high sec ballot's going to be interesting because you have Commander Oz in there, and this year he's reminding me a lot of Mike Azaria right before he got elected.
Mhm.
Both him and Roden have been on everything, and so is Toxic Yakin. They've
Mhm.
been every place, working their butts off. They may not make it, but you're not going to be able to say because they didn't try.
No,
Yeah.
I've got to be honest. I want to see one of them. Okay, and I have a hard time sometimes figuring out which one. If I was really inclined towards that direction, to go with. I want to see, because I think it's what we talked about last night in Open Comms. I think that there is something that can be built off of that organizationally. If they can kind of coalesce and at least get one of them on, because I like the idea of them working together. It's something that doesn't really happen much with people who are kind of related to that to that fragmented high sec kind of area. I mean, they're all different candidates, but they're saying, hey, you know what? We have commonalities. Let's work together. So I do want to see one of them be able to get on and then build off of that in the future.
I think one of the super interesting things to look at is to look at last year and look at the people who got on that you didn't expect, but also the people that didn't get on that you did expect after all their campaigning and stuff, and then seeing if you can draw any commonalities between those characters and some of the styles and approaches we see this year. Like, I think one of the people that a lot of people thought would probably get on was probably was it Joffy Orcs Gaio? Like, he was making tons of noise and what
Yeah,
have you, and he didn't end up
yeah,
getting on.
totally. I
And like
was like sitting there rooting for that guy all the way
Erica
through.
would have been on if I didn't drop out as well. So like, I think it's super interesting to look at the borderline between on and off, with probably more bias towards those who did get on, because we're moving from 14 to 10, so those
Yeah.
4 people wouldn't have gotten on. And seeing what kind of personalities and how well they campaigned and what they had behind them, and seeing how that might correlate to some of the candidates we see this year as to how much support they're realistically going to get.
Do you think it'd be a good idea if CCP made the CSM into structures? So, say for example, a candidate from low sec, high sec, null sec, and certain perspective,
It wouldn't.
broaden that.
No matter how you split it, it would be a combination of gamed and complained that it was biased for X, Y, and Z reason.
But also,
Yeah.
it's a
But you
fallacy to
would-
think that a representative has only one constituency in that way. We divide it up by space because it's easy to categorize in our own brain. But I
Yeah.
have a feeling that a player does more than one of those. Like, I do all 3 of those layers, and probably other people do the same thing. I think. What do you guys think of splitting it up if we had to do that among the categories that CCP put out during FanFest, where they say we have professional players, we have casual players, we have, you remember what I'm talking about? Those
I
categories.
remember what you were talking
Well,
about.
there's
Yeah.
no such thing as a casual player being on the CSM, because by nature of being on the CSM, you
Yeah.
become a professional
Mm.
player even if you weren't beforehand, because you're putting in 20 hours a week.
Even
Yeah,
if
but I
you're an
think-
alpha, because they upgrade your account to Omega these days as well.
Oh,
Say,
the,
hey.
the community player though is considered, I think, a casual player. Like, you might be plugged into the meta and the news and all that kind of stuff. Like Xander, for instance, I wouldn't consider him a hardcore player, but he got on
Well,
there.
you could have said the same thing about the Mittani when he ran. He wasn't necessarily in space shooting people as much as the next guy, but he certainly was on top of the political meta and the social aspect of it.
Well, but he's not a fan of it. He wasn't just reporting on it. He was actually doing it. Like, he's coordinating hundreds of people and he was delegating instructions that were being followed. So that's like, he is organized. He's playing the game in that way. Whereas other people are more observing the game and talking about it. Like if,
The blogger podcaster vote.
yeah.
Mm-mm-mm.
But anyway, I was just wondering how it slices and dices. Okay. Anything else
Wait,
on?
Well, but
Go ahead.
along that, it would be gamed, because typically the way you see things set up in kind of a real world, right? Is by districts where people reside, right? That doesn't officially exist here. Nobody has a zip code, and a voter ID from that particular district. So I mean, you could just as easily, if they split it up into categories, and one of them was, let's say, high sec. Let's say it was high sec industry, right? There's nothing stopping Aerith from going, I'm running in that district.
Aerith puts
Yeah.
Jump Clone in Iridia and says he's the candidate running from Iridia, and because nobody fucking
Yeah.
knows.
But that's a very good point as well, because just having categories there just doesn't stop people from doing it. And again, there's lots of people that are involved in various bits and pieces, which. So I just think categories just.
Well, and could you
wouldn't
imagine
work.
trying to slice and dice EVE Online into even
It's
10
impossible.
categories? I mean, you would still have people out there saying, I'm not represented, I don't have a category, because there are just so many different play styles. I mean, I hate the idea of when we talk about nullsec or high sec. Geographies are really not a demographic in this game. It's play styles.
Yeah, and the only reason
diced at very thin levels in some cases.
And the only reason people see a lot of null-sec candidates get onto the ballot is because they generally tend to be the people that spend the most time playing EVE, whether it be in client or out of client in one way or another, and do extra activities. They create tools, or they run events, or they organize, in-game events, out-game, whatever they may do. Nullsec candidates are the people that are most invested into the game, and they generally are the people that have the most wide range of knowledge and abilities in comparison to a lot.
They definitely tend to have more exposure. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, when you see the people that win and they happen to come from nullsec, number one, they're coming from already organized groups, right? To where probably within that group, they've got name recognition, but in some cases they've got name recognition even beyond that. I mean, you look at somebody like a Killa B, right? If you don't know who Killa B is in the last 12 months, now personally, if you go back 2 years, no idea who fucking Killa B was. But this year, yeah, he was one of the lead commanders of, World War B, the Casino War, and various things throughout the year, right? So it's like name recognition is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Noisy, do you have anything else on CSM before we move on?
Not really, but I do want to say that one of the reasons that the nullsec seems to dominate is players self-select themselves, or I guess Dirk would say that players self-deport. What they do is all the people that want to be organized and play in an organized manner, they will naturally gravitate to low sec or to null sec or to wormhole space. And so you have the people that don't want to be organized sitting in high sec. So of course they're not going to get represented, because you got to be organized in order to represent.
And we as the media, right? Hold on, let me air quote that. We as the media,
Nice.
do something to perpetuate this, because what do we talk about? We tend to talk about things that are happening that players do, right? And that whole players doing it thing, the stories behind that tend to evolve from places like nullsec. They tend to evolve from places like, low sec, in some ways. But really that whole nullsec area is so filled with players doing things that get attention.
Well, yeah, and on that point, it's not just because these things are happening only in nullsec. Like there are things that happen in low sec and high sec as well. But again, the players that live in nullsec are generally the people that want to write about these things and share about these things because it's part of their communal group that they're doing it. But it's really difficult to get people to talk about high sec stuff or low sec stuff, or even wormholes. It's like so hard to get somebody to write about what goes on the wormholes. It's just like this weird, dark, mysterious place with its own strange politics that nobody really understands unless you live in there. And I think that's probably one of the things that happens. It's just that people in Nullsec are generally more, hey, we want to do it, and that's a grand tradition in EVE.
Hmm.
There's
So
a
what you're
grand
saying is
tradition of
nullsec is America and the wormholes are the United Kingdom.
uh,
All right.
Well, Caleb says out there, and the content creation dominance from from Null is by CCP/game design. Look, it is. It's something we've been.
Interesting point.
It's something that we have been saying for years. That why do things get more attention? Because that places like Nullsec, places like Wormholes, these are places where it's all about player-driven stuff there. Right. So that's why they make stories. Stories get created from places where it's the players that are in the most control of creating the narrative, of creating the story that is sexy.
Yeah. Well, but as you can see, evidenced by Victor here, that not everybody is into just doing the epic things and being a part of, giant tie-dye
Yeah,
fights.
I
that
like
last
to
4
fly
hours.
around and get Terrans blown up.
Yeah, or almost.
I love
blown up,
that.
survive. Okay, let's move on. In the last half hour here, we're going to go into headlines. This is something we're going to adopt, and that is headlines at the end of the show instead of the beginning, so we can get right to the topic and let guests go if they need to. Victor, in this case, you're welcome to stick around. But
man.
first thing is the March
New
update.
favorite.
Yes, my new favorite. He's gonna hang out with us. Guys, make room on the bench for him. Scoot over a little bit.
On that seat, boy.
Rigged.
March update. There's a nice article for Imperium News by Thel, and he goes over some of the changes that have been discussed probably in the last week because they were announced before. But is there anything that you guys wanted to cover there that got announced?
Total worth. Oh, my EP groweth with the total worth. I tell you, I'm just gonna look at that and go, look how much ISK made of, and why don't I have any of it in my wallet?
It's true. There's like, I consolidate all my wealth into one character. First of all, so I don't accidentally spend $1 billion on something that cost 1 million. But second, I like looking at the big pile of money.
Exactly.
Your EP may be growing. Mine is shrinking inside itself, becoming self-aware. Like, no. I don't want to know, man. I don't want to know how poor I am.
Don't tell me. It's like you open the cupboards and you just hear your stomach growl. There's no food in there.
Yeah, that's my asset list, man.
Yikes. Right. Well, anyway, there's a bunch of stuff. You can check that out again on Imperium News. There's an article by Thel that goes over the bubbles and the super balance pass that's going on, super fighter balance pass, the Rorqual nerf is a big deal. All this stuff that's in there now.
You leave my Rorquals alone.
Yeah.
Is there an article by Moomin so that we can know to wait for an article by Seraph tomorrow?
No. that love affair belongs out there, not in here. So
I mean, I want like a third writer to do a fanfic about them. Like, I think that's the only reasonable next step in this process.
Just in case people don't know what we're talking about, there's a writer for INN called Moomin, and there's a writer for EN24 called Seraph, who generally, whenever one publishes an article, the other writes a rebuttal article, and then the other responds in return as well. So you get this back and forth across the two sites. It's both popcorn delicious and quite scary all at the same time.
They have their own little media war.
Can get involved is they can third party Overwatch on it or something.
Totally. Yeah, they have their
Honorable
own
third party.
CZ wouldn't do that because CZ's a good media site.
Shots fired.
Nice. Day one, first demerit. Actually,
Hashtag media war. I was told there was a media war. I'm trying to make it happen.
yeah, excuse me. Where's the media war? I'm here for the buffet. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, CCP, you goofed again. You accidentally released early updates without pictures, and I've read that that is actually going to be released this Sunday. It wasn't to be released this summer. It's going to be released this Sunday.
What that thing that supposedly leaked out about summer?
Yeah, and I was thinking before we go into it, should we even go into it? Should we just let them actually release it and we'll cover it next week?
Just let them do it. I mean, at the end of the day, if people really want to find out about it, it's on Reddit. Like, you could just go find it on Reddit. It's fine.
I guess so.
I've told you where to find it now.
And it's not like CCP might like leak something and let something slip out that's like totally false and they change their mind within 24 hours.
I mean,
Mm.
yeah, I'm sorry. There's some cool stuff in there. I mean, obviously, in the minutes we had heard about Tech 3 cruiser rebalance and stuff like that, right? Obviously, that's in there, but things that we didn't know about but had been talking about due to other circumstances. Uh, Overhaul of asteroid fields.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
That
forward to
interests
what
me.
that is.
That intrigues
that
me.
is seriously interesting. You know what I mean? Because I mean, if they do it the right way, which is a complete review of mineral acquisition in this game and how how it's all laid out, and we've talked a number of times about the anomaly belts and everything in nullsec, and what the rorqual is like and all that kind of stuff. Maybe this is the big review of all of that we've discussed.
All right, I need to step away for a minute, and you guys continue to talk about this. But next, we're going to go to the curse catch. Do you guys want a little more time on this, or do you want to save it for next week? The CCP stuff. Sorry, to be clear, we'll save it for next.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's not enough meat out there on this thing. It's really
No, it
just
was like a few
headlines.
sentences.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's let CCP have their surprise and their delivery the way they want it, instead of jumping on them for goofing and giving us content before it's ready. And let's talk about the Chris Catch battle. Why don't you tell us about that, Tiberius? You were there, right?
Oh, it was dreadlicious. Nom 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 nom. I absolutely loved it. So there was a PL Astra House down in the system of 1PW TAC-W, which I'm so bad. I was even there and I can't even remember whether it was Curse or Catch, but it was one of the two. And we formed up, and Test, CO2, and buddies, including Brave and some other people, all formed up to go and shoot this Astra House. So we arrived in Tech 3 cruisers. And as soon as we arrived, hello, Dread Bomb. Test and CO2 and co dropped 50 odd dreadnoughts on it, which was a bit of a shock. I was like, you're dropping dreadnoughts on an Astra House? Okay. But what they weren't expecting probably is to get counter dropped by PL and NC with their own dread bomb. And in the end, something in the region of 50 or 60 dreadnoughts died last night, which was crazy. But it was pretty good.
NC lost 29 dreads overall, or something along those lines.
Yep. And Test and CO2 lost somewhere in the region of about 40 or 50, I think, which is a crazy number. It's like 300 billion ISK worth of stuff exploded.
It was a proper
over
old
an Astra
school dread
House.
knife fight.
Yeah,
This was the first time I used my dread in actual combat. And it I jumped in. My name begins with an A, so the inevitabilized. Jumped in my next snag, jumped right back in, and started blowing up dreads.
Yeah, I mean it was amazing. It was such a good fight. And it was one of those old school brawls that people keep writing about or reading about or reminiscing about. And here we had just two groups going toe to toe with dreadnoughts, which just never happens anymore.
Strangely, though, it does add an interesting
at least tweeted out at some point. Yeah, we'll just keep jumping in more dreads until you're out of ammo.
well, that's an interesting thing. Because of Phoebe, you jump in with your dread for the dread bomb. You die, you come back, you jump back in again, but now you're doubled up on fatigue. So if you die again and jump back out, jumping back in again means that you're stuck on that grid for another hour, dude, unless you self-destruct that dread. Like if you don't die again.
Yep. So the moral of the story is don't die twice. But it was
well, even then, I did it twice. When I jumped back out, I then couldn't jump with that character for like another day if I wanted to get rid of the fatigue. So dread bombs. So baiting a group into a dread bomb is now a valid tactic if you want to build up their fatigue for an operation the day after, 2 days after, because they can't afford to do many jumps after. If you see what I mean.
So it's kind of the Sonos shotgun effect, if you like. You got 2 shots and that's it. You have to reload after that.
Yeah, I think that messing with your opponent's fatigue is definitely a thing we're going to see much more attention paid to in upcoming wars.
It was good though.
Well,
it was pretty good.
It is interesting that the PL is ahead on the meta. Did you guys discuss that already?
We didn't, but like that's kind of how PL's been able to do what it's done for the past many years of its existence. Like they were never the biggest or necessarily the richest. They just had the most hardworking theory crafters and kind of like figured out what the next hotness was and abused it until other people caught up.
Right, but now you have a bigger gap because it's not just a balance pass. Maybe it is a balance pass, but carriers, the fighters changing into fighters you have to use, and instead of just kind of deploy and wait. Now it seems like there's a lot more levers to turn for them.
Yeah, you've gone from a place where people were multi-boxing supers as well as all their other stuff to you can fly a super or a carrier and not multi-box.
Yeah, and I mean the fact is NC did that very well for a very long time. They were able to have triple box. You one a sub cap, then you have your carrier out there, and then you had your super waiting to come in if needed. So you could do that sort of stuff. But now carriers require a lot more attention, so I think it gets a little harder.
It's definitely a lot harder. I mean, the micromanagement you need to do on the fighters to have them do their jobs effectively is it's kind of like multi-boxing all by itself, because you're keeping an eye on 5 different things doing, or 3, depending if you're in a carrier, 5 if you're in super, just keeping an eye on what are they actually doing and where they are and what's coming after them all at the same time. So it's almost like multi-boxing 5 frigates all by themselves.
Right. It's funny about this 1P TAC W fight. The cache that was used is suspected to be the same cache that ProGod sold to PL. So basically, Test got beat up by their own Dread cache. Anybody cover that?
Well, allegedly, that's also the cache we used when we did that big jump on the first time there was a massive massacre of goon caps after they moved to Delve, when PL jumped onto, I think it was like a jump bridge or something, and they lost a Revenant. I think it was like Asher's Revenant, maybe?
No, it was Jay Amazingness.
Yeah, but that was also supposedly the test Dread cache, and I
Yeah,
think
it
it's
was.
going to be that story where the test Dread cache keeps growing and growing and growing the more times we use dreads in that area. And we go, oh, PL are using test dreads against people. PL, when in fact the Dread cache ran out on the first jump in.
And they never really were tests. They were actually pro-gods, but they were bought by Lenny Kravitz. So they weren't really, it's not like Test built these things that I'm aware of. But they were ordered for pro-god, and they were paid for by somebody else. So who knows who they actually belong to. But the point is the PL has their hands on a stash down there, and that's what they can be used for, is a little bit of power projection in that area, even though they're not there. Right. CCP terminating Japanese distribution. This was covered pretty well on I made a joke that the Koreans, who don't really like Japanese, were really happy about the change, but on the Open Comms show, where it was more appropriate, I probably shouldn't have said it here.
But it's true.
So that was covered very well on Open Comms. And
well, you know what?
They'd make a lot of money off the Asians, though, the Asian market.
Well,
I
mean,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how big it is there. When we know niches, we know EVE is a niche game globally, right? I don't know what it's like over in these places. Some people say it's really not that big in a place like Korea because it's not the type of game that really is,
yeah. I mean, there's no Korean localization for EVE, which immediately alienates it for a lot of the players down there. Japan was really the only Asian country that, other than China, obviously, but that's kind of a weird exception to the rule. But Japan was the only country that had dedicated localization, which was done through a company similar to how they did China, through a company called Nexon, which is a huge company. We're talking revenues of like $113 billion annually. And employs 5,000 people. It's like the Asian version of Steam, effectively. And they managed all the localization of the client, but they also managed all the PR and the sort of the sales. So all the subscriptions and all the additional services were run through Nexon. But it's a bit, I find it very, very coincidental, might be just totally coincidental, that a year ago, that when skill injectors came out, Nexon didn't offer skill injectors, extractors through, or the ability to buy skill extractors, because they ran a completely different sort of pay system. So the Japanese market just didn't get them. They could pay for injectors with ISK, but they couldn't buy the extractors with real life money. And then on top of that, there was about 3 or 4 months ago a very impassioned post on the Japanese section of the E forums from a Japanese player, which is basically almost identical to the Russians recently, complaining about the localization of the language and the client as well, saying it's generally garbage. So I don't know whether CCP, I mean, first of all, CCP not being able to promote, the new hotness, which is the skill extractors for a start in a region where, gaming is about the same revenue wise as between the West and the East. It's like $47 billion annually or something like that. I can't remember. It's each, so it's a lot. But so it's that's probably kicked off the whole thing. That why CCP's done this.
Tiberius, I need you to finish the show. I have to go hiking with the family, and good luck. You have about 4 more topics in about 15 minutes.
Hey,
there you
just
go.
whiz through them then.
There's a fire. There's a fire. Jump into it. Thank you, guys. I'll be back. I'll see you guys individually later.
What time is it out there? It's like
8:15.
Uh-oh.
Your router's still drunk. Oh, there it goes. Cleared up.
Bacon. Good morning. Jesus.
Yeah, I just got a question on the Japanese localization. Did CCP terminate with Nexon, or did Nexon say this isn't worth our while to do this stuff anymore, and so we're just gonna not do this anymore?
Don't know. We don't know that for sure. We just know that the partnership agreement is terminated. I don't know whether it's because it's just naturally come to its end and CCP has decided not to renew it, which is also in line with the Tian City contract that's in China, which comes up for review as well this year. But yeah, so the contract is coming to an end on the end of March, which basically means the Japanese client is coming to an end completely. But it does mean that they'll be able to purchase stuff directly from CCP, which includes all the services they didn't have access to before. There is like a 10 or 15% increase cost-wise for them, which the Australian viewers will probably be very familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it means they will get access to services that Nexon just wasn't providing.
If you want to
it does
get ripped off at everything, though.
You can, and say that, well, maybe CCP are about to unveil a complete pan-Asian marketing strategy, which means that they had to completely redo all their contracts and are now gonna. I mean, I don't believe anything that just came out my mouth, but
It would work. Like money-wise, it would work if they centralize their own system.
Like maybe the Shanghai office is about to, as well as doing Gunjack, actually manage that part of the world's access to EVE Online.
Well, Noisy was saying to me the other day, what was it, Noise, that that the TN City contract is up at the end of June or something like that?
Yeah, I'd heard that the Tian City is at the end of June, and I'm just wondering, either is are they getting set to just redo everything in Asia, or what? Because or maybe the Chinese government's going to let CCP actually run the server in China itself, because they've been in Shanghai for so long.
So
if
would
that means
mean
we get hold of the
Chinese players get access to Tranquility and Serenity slowly dies?
I don't think the Chinese government's going to let their players go to Tranquility, but it may be that because the geopolitical situation where the Chinese government is trying to get in good with the Icelandic government, that maybe they're willing to do a little nepotism or something there to let CCP slide and run their own stuff.
Yeah, I don't see any of that happening, but
no.
I think it's just a matter of it's coming due and it will probably be rolled over. I mean,
either that, or what's the company that
why
owns...
disrupt what seems to be working for them over there?
Yeah, and what's the company that owns League of Legends and Riot? It's a big Chinese company. Maybe they're going to take over.
Oh, shit. And I looked it up and
That's
told
serious
you
info.
today. Now I don't remember who the hell it was, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see them doing that. I don't see them, kind of going through that process, because that over there is as far as Serenity goes, not only is it their entire server, right, that they run, but everything else that is connected with TN City, Tencent, yeah, Tencent's the one that owns them. That TN City is doing for them, that would be a major conversion.
Hmm.
Is it really at this
But-
stage of the game kind of worth it for CCP? I don't know.
Well, they do have their offices in Shanghai at the end of the day, so you never know. They might bring might cancel the TN City contract and bring it into the CCP offices in Shanghai.
Yeah, but the Tian City contract is there because of Chinese law, where it says that you have to have a Chinese company doing it. So you'd have to have some sort of geopolitical thing going in order to override that law.
As Caleb said, who knows? Maybe Tencent buys CCP and just
So I guess
FanFest Beijing, baby.
it was actually didn't they hold a Chinese version of FanFest recently?
Yeah, I think they had something over there.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
good.
think it was for the release. I think they had a big expansion release for one of the expansions they did.
We've got to tell them about Eve Meat. There's probably some really good Chinese, Chinese player meetups
Sadly not,
that
no.
somebody might want to go to.
I get some in Korea
Have some-
when I
have
look
some
at it, but I
fried
never
rice?
see any in China. Oh,
Fried rice, Peking duck.
but I guess moving on from this one, because we were kind of running out of time on this. Anybody else following the law in respect to like the law news, which has just been going absolutely bonkers in preparation for this apparently law event in FanFest that's coming up?
You talking
Matter of
about-
saying bye bye.
Are you talking about the
The
space
plague?
herpes thing or whatever it is that's going on?
The space herpes. Oh, the Kanoki plague, or the Kanoke particle. But yeah, there's been like normally the law side of stuff is very very regular. Like something comes out every sort of month or so. But in the last couple of weeks, there's been something coming out every single day almost about this, and so it's quite interesting to see what they're kind of ramping up to.
It's a build up to something that they're doing at FanFest, where allegedly players will make a decision at FanFest with regards to what happens in this storyline.
Yeah, we got some LARP going on, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but CCP Seagull was a pretty famous LARPer before she went to CCP back in Sweden.
Is that a thing? Like being a famous LARPer a thing?
You can be a famous dude. I'm a famous internet spaceship tournament commentator. Like that, you can be a famous. If I can be a famous
That's true.
you can
That's
be a
true.
famous anything.
Yeah, but what she did, she actually she got credit as a producer on this one TV show where they integrated the TV show with LARP with Entopia Online. And so there was this big thing, and the show won like an International Academy Award or something like that, or whatever the award was. So she's actually been involved in stuff like that as like at a producer type level, and she did coordination. So it's not as silly as a concept as you might think. She's actually got experience doing that stuff.
Cool.
I guess it's wait until CCP tells us what's going on.
I know, but in the meantime, you got a lot of reading on the law side of stuff, which is
Basically, I just wait for Ashtarothi to write an article, and then I read it and go.
Yeah. Well, in fact, he
Okay.
has. He wrote an article on thingy. Oh, is that the shopping? Please don't be the shopping, because if that's the shopping, I'm going to have to go.
It's all right. Me and
Hang
Dirk
on, let
can
me
hold
check.
it down.
You guys hold it down. You got the sheet. One sec.
Where's Tibbs going?
I think the shopping's arrived. He probably has those Tesco's deliveries, when they bring it to your house.
Oh,
Oh, the home shopping.
Looking at the news, on my first day as a co-host, I now basically just take over the show. So, guys,
Yeah,
I'm
you
going to
can
ask
do
you
it,
a
mate.
question about what's going on. So we got up to Dread's decks on lore. So bit of news, somewhat related to My Alliance. We've
Go
had
ahead.
the first Vendetta loss mail that went down.
Hey!
It was a Goon Vendetta, I believe. It was caught using, obviously, that same test Dread Cache, which is being used for everything because it's just such a great story. It was lost by Favonius89 of House Aratus in Goonswarm Federation. Lost to, by the looks of it, PL. Looks like mostly PL Dreads on the mail. Guys, what do you know about this, if anything?
It was ratting.
I heard it could have been there could have been a spy involved because I heard on the rumor mill that someone was in Fleet.
Yeah,
and
I think it was the
got in.
case of like, I don't think it was a particularly deep spy. It was a guy you put in Karma Fleet 2 days ago called Awox McAwoxy Face or something, and like that, I don't think that was the name, but like it was that level. It wasn't a PL has been working their way into the inner depths of goons and used one of their and burnt one of their highest level
Yeah,
spies.
this is not a 4-year spy waiting for
Yeah,
the
waiting
This
for it.
was a standard low level. I've got a few characters in goons in case anything cool happens, and something cool.
Oh
happens.
shit! There's a vendetta there.
Well, I guess it's time to lock in dreads, guys. Like that'll work.
Okay, it's good stuff.
Something cool
There's
to see
there's
blow
a couple of write-ups on it, and there's a few videos knocking around on YouTube as well. So you know, you can find out and read about that. But yeah, first Vendetta dead, first one in history.
And of course, it's gonna be a fucking ratting one.
I know. Buys Vendetta,
else
goes
would it be
ratting.
doing? Well, what else would it be
used,
doing?
being used in combat by someone with testicles.
Exactly.
The metaphorical, not necessarily physical.
So, because we're running out of time, I'm going to start wrapping up the show. What we're going to do is just the usual bit, which is talk about some of the meets that are coming up this weekend and next weekend. We got the Vegas. There's a Vegas meet today, not Eve Vegas, but a Vegas meet today, which is at the Copper Keg, and that's from 6 p.m. local time till late. Then we have the Sydney Eve meet tomorrow. That's at the Rocks, and also has a guest appearance with CCP Bartender as well. Then we also have the Toronto monthly meetup, which is on the 11th. Those guys meet up every month, and again, it's at the Amsterdam Brew House. So that starts on the 11th at 1 p.m. Then there's the Milwaukee March meetup, which again starts from 1900, and that's at the Water Street Brewery. And then there's the Pittsburgh meetup on the 11th of March from 2000, and that's at the great named Olive or Twist Bar. You can find out all the information on these meetups on evemeet.net. And I think we've got like 3 minutes to wrap this all up. So, any last words, guys?
I mean, we're basically right now 1 month from FanFest, right? So,
Oh, yes.
I mean, yeah, not the official start of it, but when people start rolling in is probably, well, you know.
I
about
get
now.
on a plane 4 weeks, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I get on a plane 4 weeks from today, or 4 weeks from tomorrow.
There you go. I'm really, really looking forward to FanFest. Myself and the NT guys, we've 4 of us have managed to get an apartment together. There's probably 6 or 7 NT people going. So we'll be sort of hanging around and doing a few things. I've got a presentation to do as well while we're there. But I'm really hoping that the stuff that was accidentally sort of leaked out onto Reddit from the update site doesn't kind of spoil it doesn't spoil what was going to be shown at FanFest.
I wouldn't think it was.
No,
I mean, look, the information
It was
there
the
is not
announcement
that
for
big,
Monday, right?
I don't know. Was it?
Well, they said that what was leaked, the chat log and the T3 cruiser changes, those were update panels that were going out on Monday anyway. So that's not
Okay.
FanFest news.
Yay.
That's it's just that they have a rough time schedule for T3 cruiser rebalance. Ta-da.
Right. Good stuff. Any final words from anybody? Let's start from the top of the list. Apophany, as your first.
Sorry, shoutouts.
Yep. Any shout-outs, final words?
Shoutouts to Matrol for hooking me up with a press pass for FanFest. Yay.
Hey.
That's pretty great. And for inviting me to come on the show, which is always nice to be invited to do things. Shout out to My Alliance for being pretty cool. That's Pandemic Legion. And Yeah, I mean, shout outs to basically all the different pies I have my fingers in the most sexual way possible.
Doug.
I don't know, no real shout outs. You know what? CSM election is starting on the 6th. Go out, vote. Quit being obstinate about it. Yeah, some of you freaking hate the CSM. You think it should die, whatever. I don't know. Try and tell a friend. Tell a friend to vote. I mean, get people involved. Let's see what happens if we really had high turnout. Maybe things will be different, or we just get some more player engagement. I don't know. Go vote. It's your civic duty to Eve.
Totally. Noisy.
Yeah, I just want to echo kind of like what Dirk said. I believe that no matter what happens, the higher the turnout, the more cheers are going to be. It doesn't matter. I don't care who wins. I just want to see the things shaken up, and the best way to shake things up is a higher voter turnout. And also, I want to shout out the test Dread Cache. Long may it live.
And Victor.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Matterall and you guys for letting me come on and have a bit of a chat.
You're his new favourite now. You're always welcome.
Oh, yeah, nice. And I'm slightly far away, but in July there is Eve Down Under, so any Aussies who are going there, check it out.
Good stuff. And yeah, just for me, final thoughts on there. Once again, great show. Thanks a lot, everybody, for turning up. Thank you very much to all the viewers that have turned up as well. Great turnout. If CSM's coming up, check out all the different places. Particularly check out Noisy's blog. That's just CSM Wire. I'm sure somebody will link that one in the chat for me. It's where you can go to see where all the collections of all the CSM news and information and interviews and various bits and pieces that are going on can be found. And make sure you go out and vote, people. As Noisy said, more votes means a more diverse panel, and a more diverse panel is the best thing for the game.
And remember, you can't complain if you don't vote.
And you definitely can't complain if you don't vote, definitely. But I guess until next week, thanks a lot and good day.
Semnol ka ke mo fa seda